In this presentation, we will recreate a famous Frank Gehry project, the Prague office building. With this, what we'll do is recreate some of the geometry as it is to highlight some of the many tools in Form Z, but we'll also explore many other design variations. We'll create some complex organic type 3D forms in order to try some other variations to this project. This will highlight some of the other modeling tools in Form Z and also show that you can not only visualize these very complex shapes and edit and manipulate them, you can also create constructible, viable geometry from these complex forms all within Form Z. So let's get started. Okay, for the first space, what we're going to do is create a 2D rectangle, and we will extrude that to the height that we need, about 66 feet. We can always modify that later. And then to create the retail space on the bottom, what I'm going to do is simply take the bottom face and move that up to reshape that volume. And I can take the segment and slide that over and just reshape that volume to create the transition from one street into the other. Now you can also import 2D drawing files or 2D image data as an underlay that you can actually trace over. So this is just one of the many different ways that Form Z can be used to create your 3D geometry. So we'll use that and trace over that using the 3D Enclosure tool. And as we're drawing the wall, we can set different drawing tools in one continuous shape. So we can go from the vector line to the spline and mix and match those different drawing tools in any combination. To create the columns, I'll just create a cylinder and I'll draw right on top of the underlay image that we have, give it the radius and height that we need. For example, I'll give it a 2-foot radius and a 16-foot height by following the prompts pellet down in the lower left-hand corner. Now, once we create these objects, of course, we always have the capability to go back and edit those so we can quickly conceptualize the shape that we want and then just simply push and pull on those controls to further modify that geometry after it is created. Now from there, what we'll do is create the second space. As I said before, there's 3 different areas. What I'm going to do is create the second space, which is the cylindrical area or the cylindrical volume that represents the corner element of our project. And I'll just create a cylinder and simply move that into position. And we can always come back and modify that later. We'll put that as a quick conceptual placeholder and we'll add more detail later on in our demonstration. The third area is another cylindrical element that is right next to the other one there, and we're going to create that object as a hyperboloid, and we'll give it the radius and height value, and you can see that we can give a different top and bottom ratio to modify and sort of cinch the center of the object. Now, just like the other objects, we can push and pull on those controls to modify not only the radius and the top and bottom ratio, but we can actually open the shape up and rotate it, and you can see there's a variety of different controls that allow us to easily manipulate and modify that 3D form. Now, I would like to extend that shape into the other volume here. So what I'll do is, using the derivative tools, I'll simply grab the face and extrude that further into the other volume. So that gives us an approximation of that space. And there we have our 3 different volumes. We can turn off the underlay image, and this is our first pass through sort of quickly conceptualizing those 3 different areas. Okay, now what we're going to do at this point is go back and let's add a little more detail to each of these different areas. We'll go back to the hyperboloid shape that we have here, and let's look at some other ways of creating geometry besides starting with these basic primitive shapes. What we can do is create a series of 2D cross sections. You can create as many as you want, and we can loft a NURB surface through all of those cross sections. And this is a NURBS surface, so it has a set of controls that can be used to further edit that geometry. So we have these control points that we can move and push and pull to reshape that geometry and use that as an actual design process to try many different variations of that very flexible 3D form. We can also edit the surface directly. It's like a flexible piece of rubber that we can actually grab that surface anywhere that we want and move that and modify that and sculpt that into very complex 3D shapes. We can also undo. Formsy has unlimited undos, so we can use that as a design process too to go both forward and backwards through the many different iterations of your shape. Now, let's take this form that we have, and I would like to create a series of floors. So what I'll do is I'll create a single floor slab right here, give it the thickness that I want, and I'll move that up to the proper elevation height, and there's the first floor, and I'm going to make multiple copies of that. So I'll give it the overall distance, and Formsy will automatically evenly space those floors for me. Now what I can do is take all those floors, I will temporarily join those together as one object, so I can do one single trim operation. I can keep the inside or the outside, and you can see we can very easily trim out all of those floor slabs to match the inside of that space. So we bring back that 3D surface, and you can see that that matches perfectly to the floors. So the floors are derived from the existing 3D form. The parallel offset tool can then give us a thickness with any preset value that we give it. So we can offset that for the curtain wall around the outside of those floors. And if it's made of glass, we can give it a transparent surface style color.